Welcome to Creekside Chats with successful multifamily real estate investors. Dr. Allen chats with successful investors exploring their journey from setback to triumph. Through this window, we glimpse the truths that inspire our guests to invest abundantly and flourish in all areas of life. And now your host, Dr. Allen.
Welcome to Creekside Chats with successful multifamily real estate investors. I'm your host, Dr. Allen. After repositioning his apartment community from a $2 million value to a $4 million value in 12 months as a property manager, today's guest bought his first multifamily apartment building. Since then, he has acquired over $54 million in apartment community assets. His passion is teaching others to invest in multifamily so they can scale up, make big cash flow, and skip single-family rentals altogether. He is the host of the popular podcast, The Apartment Investing Show. Welcome to the show, Adam Adams.
And so tell us, where did this all begin? Think back to your formative years and tell us an experience that as you look back on it, you go, yeah, that was a formative experience in my life.
There's got to be a few. One, what I would just say is simply how I grew up. I grew up with my family being in real estate. And so most people don't have that type of experience. And I do believe that for me and where I was going to go, having a dad who was in commercial real estate and single family and multifamily and self-storage and stuff like that, land, growing up, it just seemed like that was normal to manage all of this real estate. And so that's probably the experience that I want to share, is just my stepdad growing up and what he taught me and how he taught it to me. Just one specific experience on kind of how that person made a big impact on my life would just be when I was out watering trees we had a tree farm, and I was watering trees and I used to do this for $1 an hour, and it must have been July. It was pretty hot. And I for the first time I came home early. And so my dad said, he said, "How did you finish so fast?" And I was like, "Oh no, I just wanted to do half of them." And he reamed me. He was like, "Son, you don't do half of your job and come home. When you start a job, you got to finish it. You've got to know that you complete anything that you start." And that stuck with me for a long, long time. I almost feel like if I start something, or if I'm about to start something, I have him ringing in my ear that if you start something, you got to finish. So it made me double think, should I really start a podcast? Because am I actually going to follow through with it, etc.? Should I actually buy these properties and raise millions of dollars from other people, or am I gonna stop early? And it's like my dad said, if you start it, you gotta know that you're in it to win it. So yeah.
Well, that is unusual for people to grow up in a real estate family. I mean, not too many of us did. So I'm sure that did help us. But talk to us about a major fork in your road that has made all the difference for you in your life today.
One day, a long, long, long time ago, I was in junior high school. And before this, I never thought that I would amount to anything. Like, I know that sounds crazy, but I was one of those kids who saw the other kids and they got along better. They seemed like they had all this confidence. I didn't feel like I had any of that. I didn't feel like I had any special skills, and I didn't feel like I had confidence, and I didn't feel like I was as good at talking to people as some of the other kids. And I remember for the first time in my life in junior high, I got a passion, and I geeked out on music, and I told my band director, I said, "Hey, I'm going to write a symphony, and we're going to play it at the end of the year." And I think that this is pivotal because what ended up happening is that band director didn't have anywhere near the amount of support that I would have ever expected. He literally laughed. He chuckled. And he was like, "You'd have to learn every single instrument, Adam. You'd have to learn how to play the violin and the viola and the cello, and yeah, you play the tuba now, but you'd have to know the clarinet, and you'd have to know where the octave breaks are, the octave keys, the register keys. You'd have to understand how high all of the instruments could play. And to do that, you'd have to learn them all. You're not going to do that in a year. And I remember that was the first time that I said to myself, well, why can't I? Like, why wouldn't I be able to do that? And I felt like I was, I felt like I needed to prove that one thing to myself and to the band director. And I thought it would also be a lot of fun. And so from that day, I started going to my friends' houses. I had a friend in the band who played clarinet. I had a friend in the band who played trumpet. And I started just teach me how to play this, and I'll teach you how to play the tuba. And so anyway, fast forward, I ended up finishing a symphony by the end of that year, and we did end up playing it that year. And there was this sense of accomplishment that I felt that I had never felt a day in my life before that. It maybe when I rode my bike, the first day you ride your bike, I think I felt it a little accomplished that day, but all of a sudden I was like, I can do anything that I say, anything that I, put my mind to. It was the first day that I decided to believe it. And so when I did other things in life, when I said I wanted to set a lot of school track records, I was not a runner, I wasn't that fast, but I was like, I want to set this amount of school records. And I learned that all it takes is work. All it takes is work and a belief in yourself. And we can accomplish more than we think that we can. So that's definitely the moment that I wanted to share.
That's pretty precocious of a junior high student to actually undertake a project like that. You must have had some innate musical talent there to have pulled that off in the first place, but of course it also took a lot of determination there. Have you stayed with music?
That's a really good question. Not to the amount that I would like to share, but I did, growing up in junior high and high school, I started making money composing and arranging music for other high schools and colleges and junior highs. And then I was going to school for music education. That was my degree, was education. And the year that I was graduating was the end of the semester that I had made a significant amount of money in real estate on my first deal. And as I looked at just this one amount of money that I almost did nothing for, I just thought to myself, like, I'm probably not going to be a teacher because I just made more than a teacher's salary and I didn't have to try for it. So that other turning point is the day that I just said, I love music. I'll probably always be involved in music. I sing music. I always get nice speakers for my cars and for wherever I'm going because I really want to feel and hear the music. I still write music. I have a podcast called The Apartment Investor Show, and I just couldn't help but I was trying to hire people to write the music, and I just kept getting like really specific on what I wanted. So I'll just write it myself. So I hadn't really done much in music until just this past year when I was writing my intro music, outro music, and all that for my podcast, which, if I have to say so myself, it's pretty good. But outside of that, I have not done much at all in music. I still own all of the instruments, like they're all in my room, and I look at them every day, but I haven't been active with music. So,
well, it's good to hear at least you still have some involvement in that. But you even before you left college, you had done some real estate investing. Well, talk to us a little bit about your first forays and your first steps into the world of real estate investing.
Step one, my stepdad was probably rolling his eyes at me. I've told this kid time and time again since he was 8 years old that he needed to be involved in real estate, and he hasn't done one dang thing. He hasn't saved 10% of his money. He hasn't invested 10% of his money. How am I going to get him to actually take action and realize that this is important for his future? And so what he did is he bought a piece of property and he gifted it to me, and then he had me pay $100 for taxes. And that was my real first foray. That was my real first experience owning my own. We had done all sorts of stuff as I was growing up. I collected rent when I was 9 years old. That was the first time I ever collected rent from one of our multifamily tenants. Yeah, I did all sorts of things. I was snow plowing the self-storage units since I was 16 years old. I would hand shovel a lot of the like duplexes and fourplexes that we owned. You know, I wasn't even 10 years old yet, and I was helping him. So my first was when he gave me a piece of property and then made me pay $100 for it. My second one came just because I finally decided to read Rich Dad Poor Dad after I sold it. I sold that property and I was like, holy cow, I made more money on this than a whole year's worth of income from bartending or if I became a teacher. And so I decided to read Rich Dad Poor Dad. So my next step after reading that and learning that Robert Kiyosaki didn't do his real estate investing with single family, he did it with multifamily. I just said to myself, that's what I have to do. So it was 2007. And I said, I've got to get into multifamily somehow. And I didn't know of any coaching programs back then. Like they've got them all over the place now, but back then I didn't know of any. And as a young man, I still didn't want to for some reason, I just didn't want to learn from my stepdad. I didn't want him to be the one telling me everything, because then he's right. And I don't know, I think I had too much ego for it. But I read the book and I said, all I got to do is I got to be an apartment manager. I've got to manage some apartments. So what I did is I called a bunch of apartment units that had an empty unit, and I just had the worst sales pitch you'd ever heard. Hi, I've never done anything with apartments, but I think I want to own apartments one day, and the only way for me to get good at it is if I learn how to be a property manager. I saw that you had a place for rent. How would you feel about giving me that for free and pay, and then I learn how to manage apartments that way? I can't tell you how many no's I got, Alan. I got no after no after no after no. And then this guy, Reed Quinn, I don't know why he said yes, but he saw something in me. And I think it begs the listener needs to think, why did he keep calling if everybody kept saying no? Well, it's just relentless. If you start something, you got to finish it. You got to be relentless. You cannot quit. And so I just said, I'm going to do this, so I got to find a way. So I called. Reed Quinn answered, and he said, sure, I got an 18 unit, and I'll let you manage it. And so that was my next step into multifamily, and then I just started buying my own properties after managing for a year.
So you just managed the 18 units for a year, and then magically you just started buying other multifamily properties.
Good. Yeah, I managed his 18-plex and his 4-plex and his condo. Uh-huh. And I did that for just over a year, and magically. And then what I did is I started underwriting deals and trying to figure out. And with Reed's help, he was kind of my mentor. I went to his house a few times out in Orem, Utah, and I just sat down with him. And one day he just showed me how to figure out what a cap rate was. And so what I ended up doing is I just looked for 3-plexes, 4-plexes, and duplexes. And I found a 4-plex. I had a new company. So I only had 1 year of tax returns, which for anybody who knows what that's like to have a brand new company and you're trying to buy a house, and any time besides the beginning of 2006, 7, and 8, the beginning of them, you're going to find out that you're not going to be able to get a loan no matter what. It doesn't matter if you made $2 million this year net. If you haven't consistently made that for 2 years of tax returns, they will not lend to you. So I went through that, and so it was another time where I went bank to bank to bank, lender to lender to lender, and I didn't get anyone to say yes. So I had to figure out what, if no lenders are letting me, maybe I just need to go to a private individual. So then I bought a triplex with somebody that I had done work for in my handyman company. He ended up purchasing it cash and then making a mortgage out to me. And we had a mortgage servicing company be the intermediary. We used Virgin Money, owned by the same guy as Virgin Records, but nobody's ever really heard of Virgin Money. So yeah, it wasn't just that I magically went in. There was still, a few steps to getting to the next place.
Yeah, I'm sure there were a number of steps, but interesting trajectory there that you went through. So you developed a successful investment company over a few years here, and really it didn't take you very long to get to a fairly substantial place there. So you could just enjoy your real estate investments, but here about a year or so ago, I guess it was, you started a podcast show, right?
Yeah, the first podcast that I started was in 2017. We started recording in May, and the reason why I did that is because I felt as though raising private equity for syndications was a challenge if nobody knew who I was. And so I thought, if I can get out in front of more people and have people talk about me, even when I'm not in the room, have people share my content, then it might be something that's valuable and allows me to be able to find more deals and find more capital. And so that's why I started the original podcast in 2017, which I ended up selling in 2019. It might have been 2020 that I sold it, but it was fairly recently. I sold that podcast, and I all of the rights to it, got a new person to kind of run it, and then I switched out of what's called the Creative Real Estate Podcast, and I started the Apartment Investing Show. And I felt like the reason why is because it would go directly to the people that I wanted to attract in the first place. And I felt like the Creative Real Estate Podcast didn't do that quite as much. So I feel like it was a good transition to kind of move it to something a little bit more, what's the word for it? Niche, and really help that one person that would end up either bringing a deal to me or investing capital in our deals. So.
Okay. Well, yeah, I was just curious about that. So, so this is your second podcast. So you have some good experience in podcasts. Actually, 3 or 4 years into that. I'm wondering if someday, if you're not going to start a music podcast.
That's funny. Most likely not. I love music. I don't think that I will. I probably will start a podcast about raising money. But other than that, I'll just probably do the Apartment Investing Show and then something about raising capital.
Yeah. Well, interesting. So, you've had lots of successes in life, and it's nice to talk about successes, but all successful people have had to deal with disappointments and setbacks and learn how to deal with those. So talk to us about a major setback and disappointment in your life. Just give us a brief explanation of what that was and tell us how did you deal with it and what did you learn from it?
We've certainly had many, but the one that I think I'd like to share is going door-to-door sales. Door-to-door sales. I did that for several years, and really what ends up happening is maybe at the end of the year you do win, but during the year you absolutely have maybe up to 100 people in one day slamming the door on you. And those types of setbacks, those that you have to rebound from quickly, are the ones that I think are the most valuable. And my sweetheart, who's an attorney, she's always been more sheltered, and she didn't want to put herself out there. This year, she's putting herself out there. And I think that that's really what we can talk about is as we go out of our comfort zone, break our fears, knock on another door after 99 slams in the face. That's how I think we really learn how to deal with setbacks. That's how I think that we really truly learn is getting out of our comfort zone as much as possible. So door-to-door sales probably is where I learned the most of that.
When were you doing that?
So I did door-to-door mission work for 2 years in 2000 and 2001. And then in 2002, 3, 4, and 5, I did home security for 3 years. And then 2005, I did mortgages. So, yeah.
Well, interesting. So why did you choose the door-to-door format for home security and particularly mortgages? That seems a strange way to sell mortgages.
Why did I choose to do door-to-door? Somebody came up to me and told me that these door-to-door sales, they go out to another state, they see the world, they explore, but also they make just about as much as anyone else would make in a whole year. And I thought that would help me a lot with my college, is if I just went out and got the whole amount of income in one summer, and I would be able to focus on my studies. I was taking 18 credits most of the time. And so I just thought, yeah, that sounds good. There was no other reason for it. My mom and my stepdad tried to tell me I shouldn't do it, but like they would support me with anything that I did. But they're like, I don't know, Adam, are you sure you want to do all this? But that was kind of how I got into it. Is a couple of people persuaded me that it would be a good way for my future, and so I ended up doing it. But what I got out of it was a lot more than they told me that I was going to get out of it. Going through that many ups and downs, and it's hot outside, and just kind of pushing yourself. It's one of the hardest things I think you can do. And I gained a lot from it. Yeah,
I've never done it. I mean, I have done mission work, but I've never done actual sales that way. Not something I aspire to do. It is not particularly fun. Well, Adam, it has been a pleasure having you. We're at the end of our time here. Before we go, just tell us what is the most satisfying and most inspirational thing that you have done in the last several years.
The most satisfying would probably be the first syndication that we closed. It was a bigger property, and finding a way to accomplish it brought me back to that same feeling that I did when I wrote this first symphony. So I'd say that's probably the most satisfying feeling of accomplishment that I've done in the last several years. There's been a lot of other cool things, and it's all grown from there as a snowball would be getting bigger down a mountain. But that was really where it started about 4 years ago.
Well, very interesting life and wonderful trajectory you have been on. So thank you, Adam, for being on the show today.
Thank you for tuning in to Creekside Chats with successful multifamily real estate investors, brought to you by Steed Talker Capital. Steed Talker Capital works with both new and established investors nationwide, creating opportunities to flourish in all areas of life. As part of our efforts to make the world a better place, Steed Talker Capital contributes to activities and organizations committed to better understand the equine. These endeavors attempt to enhance the human treatment of horses worldwide. Steed Talker Capital, working for a world where all creatures great and small flourish abundantly. For resources to enhance your well-being through multifamily real estate investment, connect with us online at capital.steedtalker.com.